I wouldn't say that this is the most deeply personal story that I could share, but if that were the goal, this story would be pretty darn close. I remember the first time I was in 4th grade, and I was spending the night at my friend's house, and after many hours of video games or Legos or something, we brought out our sleeping bags, we put them on the couches, turned on the TV, and we fell asleep watching a movie. Hours later, I woke up in the middle of the night, and the TV was still going, but something was different. I looked and I saw it was a girl, and she was crying, and it didn't look like she was wearing a shirt. And then there were more girls, and they weren't wearing anything. And I knew what I was seeing was wrong, so I put my hand up to block my view. But I had also never seen anything like this before, and I felt a certain draw to it. So I opened my hand to peek through and see. But then I closed it again, and then I opened it again, and this battle started. I remember it ended up being an advertisement for sex toys, and I was too young to understand what that meant, so I just figured that these girls, they were the sex toys. That's the message that 10-year-old me got from that. The next morning, my friend didn't believe me. He said I must have been dreaming. There's no way that something like that could get on the air. To this day, we're not entirely sure how that happened. But one thing is clear, and that is the memory 13 years later. The second time was also an accident. I was still young, and I just went to Internet Explorer to pull up Google, and I got the search bar. But also what came with it were 3 explicit images. And I exited it out because, again, I knew it was wrong. But when I opened it again, there it was. And I couldn't get away from it. I couldn't get past it. And so I went to my parents sobbing because I was deeply disturbed by what I had seen. As I got older, it seemed like it was everywhere in some measure. I mean, even the newspapers had underwear models. Movies, music, games. It seemed like everywhere I looked, there was always some beautiful woman who wanted to please. As I grew up, that presence and that pressure only grew. It was middle school when for the first time I went to my computer and trembling, physically trembling under the weight of what I was about to step into, I typed out bikini girl. Over time, I started seeking out porn. And in increasing measure, because that's the nature of it, it has to increase. So I increased how often I would watch and how extreme I would watch. And I couldn't control myself. Or if I could, it wasn't for long. So 1 year of struggling became 2, became 3, on and on and on. Now, across these years, it's not like I was doing nothing about it. I would go to men of influence, peers, people that I trusted, saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. Will you help me? Will you pray for me? At one point, I crushed a smart device, just so that I would rid myself of that temptation. And I remember I used to wear a rubber band around my wrist so that every time I had a bad thought, I would snap the rubber band. And these things weren't totally ineffective. They just weren't for long. The longest I ever went without pornography was half a year. What was more often? 2-3 days at most. Meanwhile, I am the church guy. Youth group, first one there, last one to leave. I was a machine at serving, and I was often the one who led, the one who inspired, the one who prayed out loud in front of everyone. I was affirmed for the strength of my character and my faith. All the while, I was a prisoner. It was like I had this well-constructed image of myself that everyone else saw. while behind that mask was a whole lot of dirt. In 2014, I went to New Zealand to train as a missionary, and I got freedom in this area of my life. To a degree at least. It was easy enough when you're surrounded by a community of like-minded individuals. But after those 5 months, I returned home to the familiar, and I jumped right back into my old ways. And I'd go back to New Zealand, to that strong community, A-okay. Go back to America and back to porn. And each time it would get worse, and I would cross the lines that I myself set on what I would watch and how often I would watch. It was a couple years later. I was in New Zealand, but I was going back in again. Even in the midst of this community, I was backsliding into pornography. And my friends and I, we decided to go to a men's breakfast at a church. And we went, served ourselves up a bunch of food. We split ourselves up among some tables. And sure enough, some guy shared some sort of message. I have no idea what he said, but I remember what it was unto. It was unto sharing our sin and our struggles and being vulnerable with the people at our table. And I felt this tug. I need to share. And it took me a while, but my plate is empty. Yeah, these guys are waiting for someone to talk, because I guess they were all good. And so at long last I said, yep, that was for me. I've been watching porn and I want free. And these guys, they prayed for me. No idea what they prayed. I experienced no power, no big moment, felt nothing really. But that was the day that the Lord came and broke the chain off my life. The following months from that day were just different. There wasn't any shortage of chances to go back and to fall again into temptation. But it was like God Himself had put His hands over me and covered me. Now it's been just over 3 years to the day, and I haven't gone back to pornography once. Temptations? Yes. Close calls? But it hasn't been the same since then. Across 7 years, I was addicted to pornography, and I tried everything. There were many times when I was in tears because I wanted freedom, but I just couldn't. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the resolve. I came to the end of myself. There was nothing that I could do that was enough. And when I came to the end of myself, and in this moment of vulnerability, the Lord came and set me free. If you're watching this, viewer, if you're watching this, Christian, and you are also in bondage as I was, be it pornography, anxiety, fear, depression, drugs, anger, there are many stories like mine. And when you find that you don't have what it takes to overcome, unable to make any sort of progress, there is one who is more powerful than all of your strength, than all of your will. There is one who loves you and is committed to seeing you free of these things. His name is Jesus, and He can set you free. Welcome to Witness, a video series sharing stories about the raw and deeper things of life. Get ready for more wild stories of man and God. We hope you enjoyed this one. See you next time.